How do you figure out how well a sword cuts? Aside from doing a quick yes or no check and dismissing it if it doesn't happen to be your favorite. No, I mean being more serious about this, nowadays mostly unserious topic. You can analyze the blade. What's the overall shape and cross-section? How wide is it relative to its thickness? What kind of grind does it have? What's the edge angle? Is it a coarse, toothy edge or a highly polished, fine edge? What does the sword weigh and how is the mass distributed? Or, if the theoretical stuff bores you, there's always the hands-on approach. Test cutting. You can just find out which one cuts better, right? If you know how to use the thing. Poor edge alignment and other mistakes can make you draw very flawed conclusions. And what are you cutting anyway? Pool noodles? That only tells you something about your technique and the sharpness of the blade. Mostly sharpness, really. Water bottles? Too easy, but oddly enough also tricky in some ways. A hefty sword with a dull edge may bat a bottle across the yard without cutting it, but you wouldn't want to take that swing to your leg, let alone your head. Unsurprising, of course. Unlike the movies, human bodies don't go flying through the air like rag dolls at the slightest touch. Pumpkins, watermelons, and other fruits or vegetables, fun to chop up, but way too easy. Just eat them instead. Soaked newspaper rolls and tatami mats? Now we're talking. Those require clean technique and a good blade profile, especially the shape of the cross-section and edge bevel. But they can make blades look bad. Hits that would do horrendous things to flesh and bone may look and feel underwhelming on tatami, to say the least. This is why I like ballistic gel dummies with structure. In this case, a 3D printed ribcage. Sure, the gel's not 100% exactly like flesh, but it's a reasonably close and, more importantly, reusable analog. The filament used to print the ribcage is not directly comparable to bone either, but it's a whole lot better than a gelatinous blob without anything solid inside. And I'd argue significantly better than PVC pipes and wooden dowels too. In my opinion, this setup gives you a much more complete impression of what a particular blade can do and how different ones compare. See for yourself. So this blade is fairly thick compared to how narrow it is. Right, so you're tapering the blade from the thickest part to the edge, only from here, from the center of the blade to the edge. That's not much at all. So you're always left with quite a steep angle. It's like a thick wedge. You can still hone the apex of the edge and make it sharp, but because it's such a thick wedge, it's going to drag a lot as it goes through material. This blade, on the other hand, is quite a bit wider, so you can thin it out a lot better, and this is maximized by giving it a hollow grind, so it kind of dips in and flattens out more toward the edge. All right, so this will cut substantially better as a result. Not to mention there's also more mass, so it's going to hit harder than the narrower, lighter blade. It's still possible to cut with this if I press the edge down on this ballistic gel and then either draw or push for a slice. Even then, it doesn't do much. This is quite shallow. In the middle of it, it's a little bit deeper, but it's still pretty shallow. So that's not a particularly dangerous cut. If, on the other hand, I do the same thing with this rapier, because the ballistic gel is dry, unlike living tissue, the blade skips quite a bit. It's much more visible in the slow motion footage. That's quite a bit worse. I hope you can see it on camera, but that is like at least twice as deep, probably more. And here's another problem. It takes very little to stop a slice from this blade. Watch this. Drawing slices like that are generally surprisingly bad even against nothing but clothing. Unless it's a particular kind of edge, and a curved blade helps too. We'll see that more later. Absolutely nothing. A slice and cut without any kind of momentum is generally not great, so I'm not even sure if this will do it, but let's see. No, it doesn't. This also has to do with leverage. Imagine carving or peeling an apple with a knife. You do that low on the blade rather than close to the tip. You can do it with a coarser, toothy edge. But even then, it's not an impressive result. How about something more appropriate for this task? For a drawing slice like that, you really need a curved blade. The more strongly curved, the better, and it needs to be sharp enough. That's quite good. Ouch. So in order to have any chance of cutting with this, you have to add a slice into the percussive cut by squeezing the fingers and pulling it in as you strike. And even then, it may not get through clothing. With this blade, on the other hand, it's not that difficult to get through. It's hard to even do that on squishier areas because it bounces off before you can even draw through. So the result is rather unimpressive. With both of these, it's surprisingly difficult to get through even clothing on the squishier parts of the dummy. It looks like it's doing something. But no, not in that area at least. I still wouldn't want to take this hit to the forearm or the neck. If I throw a tip shot with this rapier... The tricky part is that while cutting with a tip is more effective at getting through clothing and light to even medium armor, it also means that the resulting wound would be much shallower. So not exactly a fight ender either in a historical duel or on the battlefield. Without clothing, the difference should be a little more obvious. It's not an amazingly deep cut by any means, but decent. I'm glad that I did the gel test because a measly water bottle made a cut from this narrow blade seem downright laughable. Let's see what the heftier rapier can do here. I messed up the edge alignment on that one a little bit, but even so, that's pretty substantial. Also a good point to note, while edge alignment is important, things like tatami mats and other targets can exaggerate how much being a little off ruins the entire cut. Hopefully you can see that it's quite a bit deeper. And that, folks, is why armor is good. Any kind of armor is better than nothing. Yeah, I don't need really to say much about that, do I? Yikes. Now that would be rather difficult to do with the narrower rapier. But for the sake of comparison, I'm going to try it anyway. That was terrible edge alignment. I'm going to try it again. That's about the best I can do there, I think. Yeah, that's not as impressive, no matter how you slice it, shall we say. Decently deep cut, but nothing compared to this canyon here. For comparison, let's see what I can do with this. This is better for thrusting than for cutting, but should still be decent. That clearly hit the rib cage, as you can tell by the sound, which is always going to be better than the squishy parts. Oh, yikes. Yeah, that is rather devastating. The left pec is still intact-ish. Let's change that. Well, that definitely requires stitching. It's even deeper. All right. So basically about this far, at least. Yeah, I've turned it around because the other pec is still mostly undamaged, aside from this right here. Now, unfortunately, nothing sticks to the gel particularly well. This will probably fall off, but I'll try at least to mark that. Okay, I'll try to do as much damage as I can in the sweet spot of the blade, which is really low. Okay, pretty decent, in fact. That's better than I would have expected. Now the larger rapier, the sweet spot is higher up the blade for this one. Yeah, not much I need to comment here. It cut into the rib, not all the way through, but definitely not a good day. Not so much to make a point and more for the heck of it. Yeah, the Kriegsmesser isn't playing around, in case you had any doubts about that. Oh, something was severed. That is terrifying. Just severed it completely. This ballistic gel torso is definitely at the end of its lifespan, but I do want to see how the strongly curved katana will perform. That's really annoying. Keeps refusing to record. At first it didn't look like much, but that's pretty bad. Let's see about this. There, I really laid into it. For those few people who still believe I'm biased against katanas after all these years, how do you feel about that? At first it looked like the blade cut all the way through the shoulder blade, but this is the actual damage right here. It looks the same way on the other side. If I tear this off here, you can see that's just a shape of the 3D model that was used to print it. That's rough too. We'll try to tweak the infill to make it more bone-like, but the stuff is definitely not easy to cut. Either way, they're both devastating. There's no doubt about that. Yikes. Well, I've run out of undamaged areas on this ballistic gel dummy, except the back, which is not ideal because it's flat, so not very anatomical, but still, there's something more I would really like to try. I'm curious what this dowel will do. It has made tatami cutting quite easy. Question is how to even strike, because if I do it this way, it's way too easy, because this is kind of an unnaturally hard angle there. And anytime you have that, it's much easier to cut into it. I'm just gonna, I guess, try to dig in like this. Oh, that's a much longer cut than I would have guessed. All the way to the spine. It's hard to show, but quite deep. And it said long. Well, clearly the clothing doesn't add any protection there, so I might as well keep it off. Okay, so acknowledging that it's going to be easier to cut from this side because of the flat surface there and because there's a steeper angle here, I'm going to do it anyway. Oh boy. That is absurd. So yeah, it is easier that way, but even so, I still find that pretty impressive. That's what stopped it. Look, I know this is a little excessive, but why not? Oh, that went deep into the ribcage right there. Maybe that gives you a bit of an idea of how easy or hard this is to cut. Let's definitely have to go through it a few times. Oh, there it is. Okay, even by the standards of weapons, that disc mace is mean. Okay, I'm just gonna tear a chunk out so we can see better. Yeah, that caused a lot of damage. I think the cut with the dowel is even worse than I thought. Anyway, so I hope this goes to illustrate how we can underestimate the cutting power of swords based on whatever test medium we choose, and how we've got it set up. And also, slicing draw cuts can be really bad, except with a very sharp toothy edge or a strongly curved blade. I've done it with a straight blade with a smooth edge grind and a less curved katana, which were underwhelming, while a straight blade with a different grind did pretty well. Sometimes. As usual, it depends. Anyway, hope you found this interesting. Thanks for watching, and stay safe, folks.